worked with it, it's very often just that extra full board clear. How cheap it often is when comboed with Talented Arcanist and Moarg. Just allows you to clear the kind of boards that Rush Warrior makes very easily. So that's a good point. I'll be looking out for if that lack of the Throglaive will be hurting him.
Glory with the Watley in the opener, I'm definitely looking at keeping that. The studies is also just a way to make sure that he has something to do in the early game, if not the Gunarg. As for Surrender, I actually recall him not very often playing Demon Hunter. We've seen a lot of OTK Demon Hunter in APAC, but more so from the likes of course, the Japanese practice group and Shaxi have stuck out to me. Surrender has deviated more likely playing, I think, Rogue every single week. He's had weeks where he's brought Mage, he's tried Hunter in the earlier weeks, but it's only recently that he's really hopped onto the Demon Hunter bandwagon. I wonder what's changed, or maybe he thinks for the playoffs meta, it's just better. But I'd be interested to see him pilot it, especially with this non-Throglaive list, because I do think this is a very skill-testing deck as well.
Yeah, if I had to wager a guess, I'd say specifically this week, given that Paladin has taken another hit with both the Hand of Adal and change to First Day of School again, going back to just giving you 2 minions. I think it becomes more worth it to bring Demon Hunter, because Paladin was one of the decks that it struggled against just because the amount of threats they threw down. And now that Paladin is very sparsely represented, I do believe that OTK Demon Hunter is a very, very good inclusion for a lineup.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And you know what? Any questions I had about how adept Surrender might be about this deck have been answered. Look at this. Double Skull.
Oh, yeah.
This turn can be Aldraki or Spectral Sight, and then just the other one on the next turn. And then if he's hit Illidari Studies by then, the Skull could even come down turn 5. But even on turn 6, it's still very, very powerful, because we do see Glory has the type of hand that's not high pressure. It's very high value with the Watley. If he picks up conditioning, then he's the type of Rush Warrior curve that really spikes in the mid game. And that can be a bit difficult to play Skull going into. But until then, Surrender's under no pressure.
Yeah, I actually really like that you bring up the Illidari Studies, because otherwise I think it would be a very easy Aldraki Warblades. Whether or not you swing is then another question, but just to be mana efficient, you still get to outcast the Spectral Sight. But because you could kind of bank the mana on the Illidari Studies if you went for Spectral Sight, it gets a little more interesting, but in the end, again, do still just think being as mana efficient as possible is a way to up your percentage a lot as an OTK Demon Hunter.
If he gets the studies next turn off of Spectral Sight, he can still bank it, right? As long as it's played before turn 5 is the big kicker here. Glory going to rip the studies, which he skipped on 1 because he's going bumper card turn 2 anyway. And gets Bylfian, which is not the greatest, but it's just cheap. And he kind of wants to have cheap cards because the Watley will be filling his hand in the near future. Okay, no studies, so turn 5 will be another preparation turn leading up into Skull.
Are you in favor of just dumping the Ooze here? Because I appreciate it's very often going to find a weapon to remove, but at the same time, this hand is going to have a lot of cards. You really want to get rid of them quite quickly, and so it's definitely a tempting offer just to get rid of a 2-mana card here.
Yeah, I'm thinking there's also reasoning for dumping potentially the Og Merchant if he wants to Hero Power swing into the Crab Rider and then just kill it off that way. It's kind of wasted healing. The swings on the Aldraki are pretty relevant, I would say, to stay out of certain breakpoints, but he still has the second swing with Chaos Strike if he likes. As long as it's not the Moarg he plays, and he does play something else, then I'm happy with the turn.
No, I agree. I think while you can consider Tempo Moarg very often in the matchup, because it just walks very cleanly into Sword Eater plus Swing in combination with the Crab Rider, it's just not quite valuable enough.
Becky is just going to play Philosophy, and that means the hand will go up to 8 cards next turn, and then he will have to dump something off of the Skull turn. Again, there's still one more like dead turn before the Skull, so maybe that's when Surrender is hoping to go for a bigger card dump.
No, that's true. And if he is expecting the Sword Eater this turn, then he would of course be able to actually destroy the weapon then, which is worth a fair amount just to preserve a bit of your health total.
A Chaos Strike, pretty clean to get rid of the Watley here. Oh, that makes things awkward though, because I think re-equip would be where his head is at, but if he re-equips it, he won't have mana to Hero Power and take down the Watley.
I mean, you could obviously just go hero power and then double Ethereal Org Merchant just to kill off the bumper car. But
That's true.
at the same time, killing off bumper car isn't even necessarily that good for you because you're very much afraid of conditioning on the following turn.
Yeah, and speaking of which, the Eldraki's still on 2 charges. My bad. The re-equip looks a lot worse then. So,
I grow impatient.
what about like swing into Watley and then shoot it with the Aug Merchant and then Ooze? So that dumps 2 cards.
It's interesting, yeah.
Okay.
I guess the other
And
thing
less healing, but Surrender is just going to go for the Ooze here. Still going to have 7 cards right now, so he can still play the Skull, and if he gets 1 dumpable card, it's still safe.
Yeah, and also these Org Merchants, you have to remember they're very much not they're not useless cards at all. They will be very, very useful with the Moargs to get a board clear on turn 7. So holding on to them here, again, he's riding that line between having too many cards, but at the moment he's just still in the safe zone and can continue to just tempo out these skulls.
Definitely think at least 1 Aug Merchant should be held in combination with the Moarg because you will need an Immolation Aura or Fell Scream Blast in the near future to deal with the upcoming threats from Glory. In terms of whether or not he starts with the studies, I don't think there's anything he'd rather play than Skull this turn, so I do like just Skull from the left.
Poor Warlock.
Yeah, 100%. Ooh,
okay, these are not really dumpable cards, though. Like, he has to, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't feel good to just throw out your discounted, talented Arcanist here, and the Fell Scream obviously gets a lot better with Arcanist and Moarg.
Yeah, you're absolutely not wrong. I mean, again, I think you do dump cards here, but you do not necessarily have to. You could just take the risk that it's not exactly Il'gynoth, and with pretty much any other card, I think you're fine losing it. Immolation Aura would hurt, of course, just to deny you some removal, sorry. But being able to go for Arcanist Fell Scream with Moargs next turn is huge.
Oh my gosh, he's taking the... Okay. I've almost never done this because the one time I did, it was Il'gynoth I burned. It's really stupid, but you bring up a very good point, right? If it's not exactly that, then it's fine. Glory just keeping about with the game plan. This Crush really does fill out lackluster turn 6 even without conditioning. Okay, not a big deal for Surrender to burn a Moarg here.
Yeah, it's not a disaster. It means that he can't get away with double Moarg on this turn because then he'd be all out of Moargs. But that's fine. He probably wasn't going to be going for that anyway.
We could see single Moarg with Talented Arcanist and Fell Scream Blast for 6 points of AoE. Potentially also with the Ethereal Aug Merchant. That would be 8 AoE, which still doesn't one-shot the Crush. Admittedly, kind of awkward. Also, there's just 4 minions on board, so he kind of wants to shoot the 1/1 with an Aug Merchant.
Right, yeah. Everything's just kind of weird.
I think it's fine if he uses like everything but 1 Moarg here, because he does just have second Skull the next turn.
I agree.
Time grows short.
Okay, but you pick Skull. You're definitely not playing that on this turn, though. Okay, can he fit that in as well? He can, sure.
Okay, Arcanist and ping the 1/1. Okay, no, ping the minion twice. Okay, so he's just going to leave up the Sword Eater here, and he says it's more valuable to him to get rid of the Crush without proccing the Frenzy than to keep some spell damage in hand. An interesting line, but the cool side effect is that he's actually far ahead on board because of it. You hardly see this as Demon Hunter.
That's true, yeah. It's really just Samuro that could instantly clean this up, and especially as Glory has still not seen a conditioning, his actual plays are pretty restricted. He can't make that many uber-strong plays. And so for Surrender, he's just going to quite happily carrying on, drawing his deck.
Yeah, I think it's a clever line from Surrender, because even though he leaves up 1 minion, because he, for example, could have pinged 1/1 and then dealt 8 to the crush and then swung into it to kill, I believe. But then that would have given Glory a lot more armor, which then gets him out of certain breakpoints that Surrender has given up because he's used 3 spell damage minions. Anyway, Glory gets a pretty strong double Rakara turn with the Playmaker, can trade off the 2-1s with his 1-1s.
Yeah, he can get a lot of statage on all his minions here with the double Rakara. It's a very, very cool play, but questionable as to whether it's going to be enough, because here, as impressive as this board is, it's not representing lethal next turn in any world.
Inconvenient job for Surrender, because I'm pretty sure he wanted to play Skull from the right and then from the left. But he might not even need the second Skull depending on how well the Il'gynoth goes. Doesn't hit Philosophy, which I'd imagine he's really looking for alongside second Talented Arcanist to make sure that the combo is back online.
So looking for I-Beam there, yep, okay.
I-Beam does help him get rid of the 4-3, which seems like priority number 1 at the moment.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? And then he can go for... Well, he might go for... I guess it doesn't matter, but some combination to kill off the both the Sword Eater and the Playmaker is probably more important than killing off the Rakara.
Time grows short.
You can make the argument that holding I-Beam is the same if you're looking to Immolation Aura the next board anyway, but my concern is that the I-Beam might be too expensive to fit in with anything the next turn. Looks like Surrender is just going to soften up. Okay. Trade away and then get rid of everything but Rakara. I do like this line.
Me too. Still has the possibility to hit Skull off the Illidari next turn, so his card draw is not going to be slowing down too heavily, but Glory ain't going to be slowing down neither. He can get both the Troublemaker down, buff up the 3-3s instantly, not something that you see very often, but a pretty cool play, and of course, a play that demands an immediate response from Surrender. He cannot just leave this up and continue to draw through his deck.
It feels like he has to get lethal this turn.
Kind of.
Because the only way to clear this board requires using Arcanist with Immolation Aura, right? Which means that his actual burst damage with Il'gynoth and Moarg is super limited. He's down to 1 more Philosophy in the deck, no more spell damage minions as well.
I think you're right. I think Surrender is starting to realize he simply does not have enough pieces in this deck. He's using too much of it on removal, and I mean, both his Illidari studies finding Skull is great, sure, but you know, low-key, he kind of needed I-Beam more than he needed this Skull, just because he's not going to be getting lethal on this turn. And he needs to survive.
Okay, there's the Aura. That's huge. I think there's a way Surrender can still piece this together, not all in one fell swoop, but with like Moarg, Illidari, sorry, Fellscream Blast and I-Beam. And then some swings of the Eldrazi Warblades, like a very scrappy way to get the combo done, but looks like he's just using the I-Beam here to stay alive on board, which means he doesn't have to give up the Arcanist, and so he has an out for Fellscream Blast on the next turn for 36 damage. 14, 16. Yeah, he is alive on this board, even if there is Alex in hand, so that's fair.
Is he? With the extra 6 damage that
oh, right.
right? I think he is leaving himself dead to Alex, but just accepting that that's a possibility.
My bad. Forgot about the regenerated minions from Troublemaker. So yeah, Surrender did take a huge risk here. To his credit, there is no Alex in hand, which he knew it wasn't drawn from Watley, right? Because he saw the Dragon played.
Correct. Yeah, it's a gambit. I mean, Surrender has been taking multiple calculated risks this game. That has been the core theme of his gameplay. Accepting an overdraw. It could have been Il'gynoth, but it wasn't. He was okay. Accepting that he could be dead to Alex. It wasn't, so he's okay. And now with a draw of Fellscream Blast, he can just win the game right now?
Yeah, it's 1 and 3, right? And if he doesn't hit it, I don't think he wins. Okay, he got it. Oh my goodness. Because this Moarg doesn't actually cost 0, right? It's from the Raging Fellscreamer.
Correct.
We wouldn't have had mana to go Spectral Sight and hunt for the Fellscream Blast. It had to be the draw right now. And it absolutely was. Surrender clutches it out at the last possible moment. I was talking about having to use the Talented Arcanist to clear the Troublemaker board and then piece together a lethal with like swings and I-Beam and Fell Scream without the Arcanist. I don't know if that gets there more consistently, but Surrender did win another 1 in 3 there at the end. Calculated risks, you're absolutely right, is the running theme of not just this series, but even the last one of Surrender versus Alan.
I can't even express how cleverly I think that was played by Surrender at all points. There are so many players who I think would be, well, myself included, who would be too scared to go for these lines. You think it's you have to go for the play of maximum safety, but obviously it's the hidden conundrum in Hearthstone where even if you are being safe, I suppose, if you want to call it that, you're lowering your overall percentage to win the game. Because even though the disaster scenario can't happen of Alexstrasza being in hand or Il'gynoth being overdrawn, you're not actually winning the game. You're not leaving yourself with a win con. And Surrender played that beautifully to still give himself an out. He hit it, wins the game, deservedly so as well, and moves up 1-0 in this decider match. If he can continue this up, he will be going through to the semi-finals.
Well, hats off to Glory for playing this matchup in so many situations. Surrender had to give up multiple combo pieces there, right? He created a board where Surrender is like, I have to play 3 spell damage minions to get rid of all of this, and Surrender didn't have to play all of it, to be fair, but if he didn't, then he left himself in a very poor position in terms of breakpoints because he would have given Glory the 8 armor off of Crush, and that's yet another added layer to the dynamic of this matchup that I think makes it even more interesting. So Surrender does take the win with the OTK Demon Hunter there, which, you know, if you are in the camp of yourself and Monsanto, that's huge, right? Because I would argue the Demon Hunter is unfavorable against Warrior on paper, and you guys are saying it's unfavorable against Rogue as well.
Yeah, a monstrous win there for Surrender, and it's the kind of play that, the kind of win that you can only take if you are truly acquainted with this OTK Demon Hunter, know the ins and outs of it completely, as Surrender clearly does. Going to be lining up his own Rush Warrior now. Again, it's the N'Zoth version without the Kresh, weirdly enough. Instead going for the double Scorpids as the Beast, which is, again, something that I'm left a little confused by, if I'm honest, but it's Surrender. I will 100% defer. Pretty much every tech inclusion he ends up making does usually turn out to be, if not correct in the end, at least have some very, very good reasoning behind it. And here we see it's essentially just standard Control Warrior with one extra threat at the end.
So in terms of what Surrender was expecting to run up into against with this Rush Warrior, you'd have to assume like the other decks in his lineup that aren't Priest, he would expect to be kind of popular in the field. So the Scorpid, even though I don't think there's many effective spells you can really discover for the Rush Warrior's overall game plan, like pretty much just Conditioning, Athletic Studies, and Stage Dive. The rest feel kind of bad in Rush Warrior, especially the removal. In the Mirror in particular, the Poison is something you can't necessarily scoff at. It's not, if you play Scorpid, for example, your opponent can't just tempo out their Tent Trasher and expect it to live against that. They need to have almost exactly Gnarg or the Sword Eater to really clean it off in a nice way. So I think the Scorpid is not going to be too bad for Surrender in this matchup, but obviously the higher impact card is the N'Zoth at the top end.
Bring it on!
100%. And here already, Surrender getting that type of hand that we have been talking about. Conditioning, you keep talking about how impactful it is in the matchup, and the more we see it, the more you are vindicated in your opinion. It's just been consistently the greedier hand with the conditioning, if it can find Samuro particularly, is able to pull drastically into the lead. And honestly, I think all the rest of these cards, they're not Watley, they're not Gnarg, so I'm not interested.
Yeah, fair enough. There's certain hands where I could argue for keeping Rakara if you do have that early curve. Let's say your opponent doesn't hit Gnarg and then you just go Parade Leader Rakara, then they're kind of crying, right? It's so hard to deal with those minions. But they don't necessarily synergize so well together, the Conditioning and the Rakara, because they have kind of like redundant effects that don't come down one into the other. They kind of compete with each other for which is going to be the better buff. So I do like solo keep Conditioning because it needs less conditions fulfilled to be strong.
Yeah, ironically enough. Well, here we go. And interesting hand for Surrender. Where obviously buffing N'Zoth is, you know, for the most part unimportant. It really doesn't matter that much that you're buffing that one. But Watley being found is the thread that binds this hand together.
Once again, we're seeing in the Rush Warrior mirror, the two warriors take very opposite postures in terms of how the matchup pans out. Surrender has pretty much unlimited resources. Turn 4 coin Watley into double conditioning. There's no way he loses out on value here. But Glory has the Gnarg into, I guess, a decent curve of Tent Trasher. It's a bit awkward without the coin, but he has double Tent Trasher, right? And that's very powerful. It goes into the turns that Surrender wants to play the Watley and also develop the conditioning. So Glory could be getting this chip damage and maybe outpacing Surrender, but I think it's a bit hard without Parade Leader.
Yeah, if he does want to go for the Tent Trasher line, he does have to take the bumper car here first. He can't take the second Tent Trasher, which again is a little annoying, but there's a curve here for Glory. We have consistently seen that the curve plan is not good enough, but in this instance, Glory has the Gnarg, Surrender does not. He has Tent Trasher into Sword Eater. It's about as good of a vanilla curve as you can get. Still, I question if it will be strong enough, but if ever it was going to get there, this would be the time.
And because this turn is so weak for Surrender, if it's just hero power, I don't think he wants to use the discount on athletic studies on just a bumper car. I think he can consider rank 1 conditioning on this hand. It feels very awkward because he's not really buffing up minions to the point where it trades cleanly other than bumper car into Gnarg. But because I'm concerned about his hand space in the near future, if he is just going to go coin Watley.
Ooh, la la. This is an aggressive hand. 3 mana 5/5s all around. 2 mana 5/5s for that matter. If things will keep up. And Surrender starting to sweat a little bit here. Things getting scary for him.
Yeah, his own Gnarg is not playable alongside the bumper card because only one of those is discounted by the athletic studies, even if he uses the coin. And so this is the awkward situation where a lot of these cards are stranded in hand. The conditioning once again looks at least somewhat palatable to corrupt the stage dive. If not that, then it's just coin Tent Trasher, which does not look clean whatsoever because no matter where he sends it, the trade works out in favor of Glory.
Oh, it's just awkward, isn't it? Because the one thing that is missing from this hand, again, he's got a good hand, you can only ask for so much, but it's that Samuro. If he had Samuro, I would be so happy. Hero power, coin ringmaster, conditioning Samuro afterwards, like it's fine. You're very rarely going to die before Samuro can swing things around. But without it, do you have the pullback potential? Or do you have to go with tempo conditioning here, which is something you rarely, if ever, want to do in the matchup?
Yeah, it feels awful, but I think he has to do it to corrupt the stage dive, right? He needs Samuro or something of that effect in order to deal with this board. He simply won't have the time to coin Watley. And I was thinking, obviously I could see the Tent Trasher that would come down this turn, that it was threatening enough to put me on conditioning last turn, even though it didn't corrupt the stage dive. But again, Surrender didn't have that information. And now there's just a second Tent Trasher, which is compounding this issue, which double conditioning is a bit slow to beat if it's not exactly Samuro, like you said. And if you're Glory here, I think I'm just slamming the second bumper car every day of the week. Maximum tempo.
Okay, holding back, doesn't want to go too all in here. I mean, again, I think I also would have just thrown that down purely to put more attack on the board. I think at this point, you're all in, right? Your game plan is very clearly defined.
These bumper cars are one of them buffed +1/+1 and the other buffed by stage dive, both of which the stat lines are just not clean enough to deal with Tent Trasher. But they can sweep up the 2 minions that aren't Tent Trasher. And then next turn, he can get the tokens with the conditioning. Okay, going for a halfway play where it's Tent Trasher into Tent Trasher and then bumper car into Gnarg. So he can still get 2 tokens next turn buffed by conditioning. I think he had to go for some play that cleared at least 1 Tent Trasher to stay healthy.
And the curve's still alive. You just sacrifice in your bumper car, you'd imagine swing with the weapon, re-equip Swordy to play a 1-1 because you can, and then keep pushing face with the Tent Trasher. Try to tempo them out of the game.
I'm all for pushing the damage and playing the 1-1. That's just Glory's position in this matchup, right? He's had the aggressive start, and he hasn't had conditioning, so that's his way out.
I suppose we should talk about the Samuro, because that is about as good of a Samuro board that you're ever going to get when it's not buffed in terms of its stats. But I still think getting the body online, re-equipping the weapon is more important.
Yeah, it's just Samuro's running very little actual damage on board, and Glory is not even bothering swinging into the bumper car. I kind of like it. Surrender already wanted to trade this away in order to get the tokens a lot of the situation. So Glory just identifying he could push pretty much another 3 damage for free.
And so that could be a rushing 4-5 on this turn. Should Surrender require. He can also get a rushing 3-3. It's close, but he can't kill off the Tent Trasher, right? Which is a massive... Oh, no, sorry, it's a 5-6. Okay, perfect. He can clear the Tent Trasher, which is all the difference in the world.
Yeah, such a huge deal now because Glory has finally fallen behind on board, as conditioning does tend to make it in the mirror, but we're once again in the awkward turn 6, turn 7 position leading up into the Troublemaker, Alex. It feels like these mirrors are so repetitive, but like little nuances of whether or not you can hit the first Gunarg make all the difference in the world. I do think Glory should just be pushing as much face damage as he can. And so I am looking at the Samuro here just to sweep up these 2 minions.
So I think I agree with you. You could hypothetically make the argument that going for Bumper Car Dark Moon Rider puts more attack in play after you play all the 1-1s as well, or the same at least. But you're rarely, if ever, going to get a better Samuro than this. So absolutely, get everything online, keep swinging face, and pray that Troublemaker can somehow dodge all the minions and send this damage to the dome.
Looking pretty reasonable to hope for that because Surrender doesn't have a way of buffing these 1-1s, and so like the most he can clear off this board is 2 damage, and he can't fit in a hero power on top of that, and if he does hero power, the rest of his turn is awful.
Yeah, the real problem as well, Gloria is going to be the first player to hit Alexstrasza if this keeps going back and forth that way, so the healing Alexstrasza for Surrender is not likely to be good enough.
It already looks like Surrender's out is for Scorpid into Rancor or something like that.
Oh.
I can't think of anything better because even if he does get, like, say, his own Samuro buffed by a stage dive next turn to sweep up the board, it just doesn't matter. The board, Glory has already understood that he has lost it by that point, and he's just trying to win off of the burst damage from Troublemaker and his weapon.
Well, the worst bit is that this Ringmaster draws a card as well now, right? He's drawn all 3 dragons, I think, unless one of them was discovered at that point. Like, it's just very unimpactful overall.
One more rider and a hero power, maybe even 2 riders, I don't know. Yeah, just favoring his own stats on board to preload a way to deal with Glory's next threat. Oh my god!
Don't mind if I do. I mean, it doesn't draw a dragon, but I guess you just take a pirate is the main thing at this point, right?
You take a 3-5 body. Honestly, just anything for Glory to do this turn is premium, because this was the only turn that he needed to cross the gap leading into Troublemaker.
Yeah, you're absolutely not. You're not wrong.
I figure he'd want to send like tokens into the 3-2 and then just swing face again, because whether or not it's Troublemaker next turn, you want to have the possibility of re-equipping weapon and swinging face with the Sword Eater.
And still, it's just looking so close. Like, Surrender can put stats on the board. This Ringmaster Watley is massive, of course, thanks to it being given +3/+3 so far this game, I believe. But even with a hero power, like the Troublemaker is going to be annoying to clear. He needs to fit in 2 hero powers over the next 2 turns to not just be straight up dead to Alexstrasza, which he knows is in hand at this point because of the fact that Watley only drew 2 cards.
Oh, I'm just not seeing it. I do think he is kind of forced on Watley this turn because even though you can make the argument that against specifically Troublemaker, you can go wider with the Parade Leader and the 2 Dark Moon Riders and hero power, it's still not getting there against Alex, right? So he's not even aware of specifically Troublemaker. He can have a pretty good read, but for now, the Alex is the overarching threat that he needs to deal with at some point, and that means more stats right now in order to like either push counter lethal, which I don't think it's getting there in 2 turns, or just say that I can trade away the Troublemaker on board if the Watley is preloaded this turn.
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to be amazed.
Oy, oy, oy.
If nothing else, what this demonstrates to me is the power of Gannarg, because it's not only the ability to clear the board, it's the fact that Tent Trasher on turn 3 for Glory would not have been an option. He would have been hero power passing, or maybe playing a bumper car if he was lucky. Surrender would have had a whole extra turn before the 5/5 start coming down. It'd be a way higher health total. The board would be clear. He'd just be winning by miles. His hand was better for the matchup, but it was just not quite enough to get the job done here. Glory knows Troublemaker not even necessary because Alexstrasza can 100% close out the game next turn.
Yeah, even though Glory had like a 1 in 9 for straight up lethal that turn, obviously it was better to take the 100% lethal on the next turn because Surrender has, well, I guess not 0 ways of healing because again he is running that Venomous Scorpion that can sometimes gain armor, but it's really, really difficult to maneuver that, which means that Glory takes the matchup from the aggressive Rush Warrior stance that we've often seen the matchup go in the way of the Conditioning Warrior stance instead, but I think you hit the nail on the head with the Gannarg coming down and early Tent Trashers. There's very little that the greedier Conditioning hand can do to outpace that because we saw Surrender was forced to play 1 Conditioning early, and then the Watley came down super late because there was just no time against all that pressure.
No time to do anything for Surrender. So we are equalized here. I can't even imagine how our players must be feeling at this point. The difference between winning and losing, while at first glance may just appear to be $500 for whether or not you finish in that top spot or not. But we can clearly see the difference is so much bigger than that. The possibility to represent Asia Pacific, represent their home countries at the World Championship, either for Glory to try and get the back-to-back, or for Surrender to try and get, honestly, the World Championship that players have been expecting of him, if nothing else, for a long time now. It would be a huge relief for both of our players to get the win. And so for 1 game apiece now, the Demon Hunter having got a win for Surrender, the Warrior having got a win for Glory. I think you could argue that Surrender is still in a good spot overall because he now has the matchup of Warrior against Rogue, one of the traditionally hardest matchups in the metagame for Miracle Rogue to try and overcome.
Yes, because of the power of conditioning. We saw that the conditioning hands can sometimes be too slow, which, you know, here and there can sometimes be the case against Miracle Rogue, but I think it's much harder for Rogue to put together that type of curve that we saw from Glory with the super early Tent Trashers that pressure the Rush Warrior enough to the point where they can't get the conditioning online. It's not impossible because we can see like Octobot into cheap Kazakas into Golems very quickly, and that can be a backbreaker for the Rush Warrior, but in terms of the average pan out, even against like Foxy Fraud Swindle hands, then the Rush Warrior can easily sweep that up with the early bumper cars and then get those big swings with the conditioning.
Yeah, it's definitely what you're looking to do. A similar game plan, I would argue, as you're going for the Rush Warrior Mirror, where you just want to make these very, very big, insurmountably high health minions that the Rogue struggles to answer, of course. But even more so than that, even more important than in the Mirror, I would argue, is that Samuro. It's so crucial because one of the main ways that Rogue can pull ahead in the matchup is go super aggressive, get all these threats down at the start of the game, as we're seeing with a hand such as this one. Coin Foxy Fraud could potentially have even kept the Neophyte to keep the pressure rolling. Having Samuro or some other way to deal with all these early minions is so crucial.
Indeed. Now, we did talk about how even just Bumper Car is usually fine to deal with Foxy Fraud. I don't feel that this hand from Surrender necessarily gets it done. Stage Dive can be kept with Bumper Car because you can say, if I'm playing Bumper on 2, then I can immediately corrupt the Stage Dive, but Bumper on 2 is not often something you want to do in the case of an Octobot hand. So I'd be even expecting a full mull from Surrender here because you'd rather look for Athletic Studies and, of course, Gunarg.
Yeah, Gunarg is a big deal. Athletic Studies, I really like that you bring that up as well, because I think that's one of the matchups where it's most crucial to have Athletic Studies, because on 4 mana, which of course then get reduced down to 3 mana thanks to the Athletic Studies, you have the Outrider, you have Fishy Flyer, you have Kargath, you have multiple ways to clear off your opponent's Octobot without proccing it at all.
Alright, I had a mini heart attack. I thought Surrender full kept there, but that was just like the little on spectator. It either looks like that when they full keep or full mull. Yeah, and he picks up a much better hand. Oh my goodness, look at this Parade Leader into Rakara.
These are both pretty nutty hands, low-key.
Oh my gosh, Glory can just play like both Foxy Swindle and Vanessa this turn if he wants to.
Do you want to get Gunarg off of Vanessa? Like, I'd appreciate the argument for you don't care and you just get 2 minions on board. But at the same time, Gunarg is not terrible to get either.
Yeah, I think it's more about getting the 2-3 that I'd be concerned about. And obviously, I was talking about also Swindle, because if you go for that line, 3-2 and 2-3, and Surrender, say, clears the Foxy, then your Swindles then become very difficult to play. So I think it was between either all 3 or just Foxy Swindle, not Foxy Vanessa and no Swindle.
Well, I'm going to say that I think here, as Surrender, you do still probably need to continue up the development here. Like, if you had a more reactive hand, I would hear the argument for holding on to one of these 2-drops. But are you just going to not play stuff until your weapon comes online and then swing into everything and then play your minions? I think you just got to get them on the board.
Yeah, I completely agree. The Parade Leader, even though it's essentially just a River Croc here from Glory's perspective, wants to deal with it because it could be buffing a Bumper Car in hand or something of the like. The Guardian Og Merchant is pretty interesting here because it allows Glory to take the value trade on the Parade Leader, and then he could potentially step the Foxy to get another Swindle down. It's not super mana efficient, but I would definitely want to clear off the Parade Leader if I was Glory, because you're scared of Bumper Car, even Rakara coming down.
I agree. I think that looks like a very strong play. It's really just about how you fill out the rest of your turn that I would look at. But wow, Glory going with the full holding minions line instead. Obviously, anything he played would be vulnerable to the Fiery War Axe, which is the main reason behind this play. But it is still very slow, very, very passive compared to how I think you and I would have played it.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how this would have worked if Surrender had forced, with this turn from Glory just forcing, say, Tempo Rakara from Surrender. And I still think it's a bit scary for Glory against that because he doesn't have Brain Freeze or Prize Plunderer. As it happens, Surrender has drawn Playmaker now, so that's an even higher threat minion to tempo out. And I absolutely think he does tempo it out here, even though he is scared of Brain Freeze. Just the payoff of it, if it potentially sticks with Rakara, is immense. And even if that is just dealt with, and say you stick your Gunarg, then the Rakara is still pretty good.
I agree. I think even if they do have the Brain Freeze, from where you're sat, it's not Man-Crick, right? It's not just playing out minions on curve, which is also pretty scary at this point. And so even if it doesn't stick, you're disrupting their game plan, which is also a very valuable factor.
Playmaker also challenges Octobot in terms of his stat line. It's just really strong, I think. Surrender roping it out all the way, but does end up on the Playmaker at the end there. And that's not what Glory wanted to see. Doesn't have a way to deal with this. Oh, never mind.
I mean, you say never mind. How does this work on this turn? Do you go Org Merchant and then punch into the Gunarg to clear off the Divine? Or I guess punch and then Org Merchant?
So many options.
Yeah, it is a bit awkward, isn't it? I think, yeah, it ends up being the Vanessa prize plunder because he can kill off with the punch and then step to get the playmaker. In terms of what the Og Merchant achieves, for the full clear, it actually ends up just floating some mana, whereas he still could have gotten this 1 ping damage from the first prize plunder because he had to step no matter what to deal with the playmaker, right?
Right, I like it indeed, but it's not what Surrender wanted to see, obviously. But now with Overlord Runtak his hand, there starts to be some merit to holding back, whereas before his hand pretty much just screamed, throw me onto the board, and try and make anything happen at that point. But Runtak did incentivize some amount of passivity, just because you can then buff up more minions.
Did, but I think Surrender already exhausted quite a few resources from Glory there. We saw Vanessa for no combo value just to deal with the playmaker. And so Rakara presents a very similar threat. We can see Glory deal with it with the Guardian Og Merchant, but Surrender is just playing out minions on curve, and that's dealing progressively some chip damage against Glory. Rakara and playmaker essentially must removes on the turn they played because they just threaten so much persistent damage. So I think this is fine for Surrender to just continue with the run attack.
Wow.
Glory, however, gets the Octobot online.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised to see that over Swindle, because it just walks very, very cleanly into Tent Trasher on 5 mana.
I agree. As it happens, the Runthak nor even Parade Leader Crab Rider can one-shot the Octobot, so it's pretty good for Glory here.
Yeah. No, for sure.
I still think it's fine for Surrender to just play Runthak, though. Like, floating this turn for fear of Octobot discounts feels far too expensive. It's only 3 cards in hand for Glory. The fear for Surrender is if he discounts it himself this turn, then Jandis could be coming back down the other way for 5 mana as the scariest possible threat. But if you wait for the Octobot, then Glory just gets to discount even more minions. So I think it's very disciplined for Surrender to do this.
Yeah, 100% agree with the proc on this turn. It was just whether or not you swung with the weapon as well. Kazakus off the top is interesting, of course, especially if you go for 1 mana and find a way to actually kill the Runthak. But just going for the 0 mana passage, a little more likely to work out for you.
Yeah. And he did pick up a way to deal with this, if anything, just the Wicked Stab and the Og Merchant. But it's so awkward because all he gets to do with the rest of his mana is Dagger. In fact, we could see like stab trade and then field contact for tempo here.
Oh, true, you could. I don't know. I'd rather have field contact in my deck that I can just draw right. Like, it's still a good top deck at this point.
That's fair. Guess I undervalue cards from Secret Passage, just assuming I'm not going to draw them in the near future. But yeah, he does have Swindle. Very good point. Ooh.
Oh, I see a play.
I see a very strong play. Even though it's just buffing 3 minions, these 3 minions are not dying in the next turn. Surrender simply has to worry about what's his turn 7, and I guess you just believe in the power of your top decks by that point because he gets to push so much damage with the Parade Leader Crab Rider here.
That's right, your one plan only, bridge the gap until turn 8 and then hope that Troublemaker alone can carry you to a win. It's not a bad plan, but Glory will have something to say about it first. This Kazakus primarily is a very intriguing option. Ooh.
Oh, I think that's a better option. Like, Kazakus has a outside chance of giving you the shoot poisonous, but it only kills 1 minion most, right? So that's a better way to spend his mana. Gets Teacher's Pets and can step the Jandis.
Pretty sick. I think you probably make the Teacher's Pet the illusion version because it's just going to be overkilled anyway, unless there's a couple of niche possibilities that just clean it off.
Oh, Scorpid, pretty clutch for Surrender. Oh, we don't get to see the option. The one time.
Yeah, it's annoying when the spectator breaks like that. I mean, I'm not entirely sure what you're looking for that's especially good. Like, warrior spells at the moment are really reactive and defensive. I guess Athletic Studies, Stage Dive, the cards that are actually in the deck.
Oh. I do think, like, in most situations, the reactive cards are bad, but against specifically Jandis, I think he'd take, like, a Blade Storm here if it were offered, just to sweep up some minions. Sword and Board's pretty good, shields them with even just a hero power to test an illusion. All of it is much better because, as it stands, Surrender would have to spend, like, one of these minion attacks into illusion minion, which feels very, very awkward. So he did just take Record. I think that's an excellent pick for this situation. You just rip it, right?
I think so. Yeah. I mean,
2.5 minions?
You want to save this for a turn with field contact, but you are 100% spending your mana on Troublemaker next turn. So you just want to make it as awkward as possible for them then. The Rattler is a pretty sick minion, actually, for Glory to get here. He can clear the board? That's insane!
Yeah, the Death Rattle on this deals 1 damage to all enemy minions, I believe.
Yeah.
Card. Some people playing it in OTK. In Death Rattle Demon Hunter.
I'm looking for a few good
That's so sick. Oh my goodness.
It is powerful. Not the ones Glory wanted to see. No copy available, but I think he can just take the draw here. Maybe even the +2/+2. Maybe it's ambitious to think that something sticks, but I don't know.
Like
double Alex.
I'm looking for a few
Now he can take a 1 cost, I think. So if he did take buff on the Greater Golem, there's a way to immediately get value.
That's true.
Okay, double 2 cost, it seems like, is the outcome.
Yeah, I think he's trying to find a removal option for Troublemaker. Should that come down next turn as well? Probably.
Yeah, big deal. Alright, well, this is the push that Surrender bridged the gap for. Stage Dive corrupted. Good outcome from the trades.
Ooh, poisonous +2/+2 rush and draw. It's close, but it's not quite the options that you are looking for. Unable to kill the Troublemaker, and freezing it is not good enough, my friend. This needs to die on this turn.
Might be enough to stay alive 1 more turn, but yeah, the persistent 3/3s generated are far too threatening. But is that a prize plunder?
It was that can deal 3 damage, but both Shadow Steps have been used. That's the second prize plunderer.
Yeah, and both Brain Freeze uses as well, so it's like no top deck off of the draw from the field contact with Prize Plunder. It could deal the remaining damage on the Troublemaker, so it sticks. Surrender has Stage Dive for pretty much any minion. Is super scary here. That's probably one of the worst draws you could have gotten, though.
You just clear the runway, right? Let these 3/3s do their work.
And you just play Conditioning as like pre-nerf Hand of a Doll for no draw here. I don't know. Extra Arms, that's the card I'm thinking of.
I wonder.
It's just so much damage.
Yeah.
He's afraid of golems, but then you play around the golems by going wider, right? And he will get these 2 3/3s from the Troublemaker. It's one of those niche situations where you can use Samuro for very little value, but because Glory's all the way down to 17 and 11 after this turn, if it's a fully clear board, I think it's absolutely worth it to front load the stats.
I think so too. The thing is that if you're afraid of Alexstrasza, next turn you'll be able to buff your your Samuro up to the point where they won't. You'll be able to clear the Alexstrasza in 1 go, which is kind of interesting. But even then, it's a minion in play. You're going for the lethal out.
Yeah. I think Surrender was always playing Samuro here because you just cannot leave field contact online, which was, it's not guaranteed to die from the Troublemaker minions. It's just between whether or not he wanted to play Conditioning. And I think because, you know, on average, you're only going to have 1 more minion next turn to buff it with, then might as well front load the stats because he's going for this aggressive game plan. Glory is forced to go digging with the golems now. That's not it. I don't think there's anything off the passage that can deal with this, with having seen both of the Brain Freezes and the Prize Plunders played.
He could have hit 10 Woo to replay it, but as you said, Flurry here would be huge.
Yeah.
Flame Strike is too slow. He can go for
Evo
Wicked
can
Stab.
get Flurry.
Like, I mean, he's not dead, right? He can survive the turn here, go for Flame Strike next turn, pray that that is enough. It's going to be so close, this game.
Oh, but any, like, Sword Eater, Alexstrasza, Surrender's just counting all his outs here. Like, 3 damage. Not to mention there's just like Nazoth in his deck.
True.
Lots of strong draws. Watley's lethal, that gets Sword Eater.
Yep.
Oh.
Guaranteed the weapon off of the Sword Eater to be able to close out the game. I've got to be honest, I thought Glory was taking that one. The play of going for the Troublemaker, it was strong, make no mistake, but I didn't think it would be quite strong enough. However, Glory, both Shadow Steps used at the start, a Prize Plunderer, both the Brain Freezers, not quite enough. It just showed that once you use those Shadow Steps, Rogue's flexibility plummets. To actually kill off these big minions becomes very, very difficult because the Prize Plunderer just does not deal enough damage. And while I can respect the way that Glory played it in the early game, taking things very slowly, in the end, just not quite enough to pull back against the likes of Troublemaker. And Surrender takes the win. Another instance of such cool play on all parts, even in the face of Fell Rattler, to almost take the game for Glory.
I love how the new cards are finding their ways to sneak into playoffs, even though most of our Grandmasters have deemed them not good enough to make it into their deck lists. We've seen a lot of Discover options off of the mini set, and the Fell Rattler did come in partially clutch here for Glory. It was almost enough to stabilize, but not in the face of the Troublemaker. And Surrender absolutely played for this out, just curving out from the very beginning. We were talking about how strong just Playmaker dropped on 3 can be versus Rogue, especially after having seen how difficult it was for Glory to deal with that first Rokara and Parade Leader from Surrender. Curving out is definitely a way you can win this matchup as Rush Warrior. And I do think that Glory gave it the best he could. I think maybe a bit less greedy options on the golems where my head would be at, like maybe 1/1 cost if you are going to take 2 golems, because it's really difficult to assume that both of them can get played. And from that point, Glory's value issues were completely solved. But other than that, I think it was super clean from Glory there.
And now for Surrender, the one deck he needs to win with is this Miracle Rogue. Do that and he can go from a couple weeks ago looking at relegation to this week going through to the semi-finals. What a turnaround it will have been for our golden boy, our wunderkind of the APAC region in Surrender. Playing this slightly different list to his opponent. Again, he has one Mutinous, whereas I believe Glory is going for the full standard 30 cards with Vanessa. Obviously, I think that's going to favor Glory if I had to pick a side here. Not by much, because Mutinous could be impactful, obviously later on if you could eat Alexstrasza primarily. But for the most part, Vanessa is a very powerful card in the matchup that you would much rather have to get both the tempo early on and keep your opponent on their toes as to what order they can even play their cards in.
Yeah, there's a reason that whenever we see deviations from the standard rogue list that has Vanessa in there, the cards that are swapped in are still very cheap, right? It's like Penflinger and Broomstick, because you want to keep the Battlecry and combo set of minions streamlined and cheap as possible to make sure that your field contact trains can be undisrupted most of the time. Mutinous can sometimes be one of those dead draws in the early game, like Alexstrasza that you, or Wicked Stab that you get off a field contact, or like, oh, that's so unlucky, I can't keep the train going. But Surrender has deemed the risk worth it in order to shore up some other matchups than this one. I do expect to see everything but the Octobot mulled here, though. I guess there's some reason for Jandis, but I still feel like it's a bit ambitious.
Yeah, I was going to say Jandis is, like after seeing the turn 3 Jandis from Alan last week, I've gotten a taste for it. I love that, that fine vintage of a turn 3 Jandis. But even then, I agree. The more I play with the deck, the more I realize that going Octobot into big minions is good, but it's not what you want to do. What you want to do is go Octobot into these disgusting field contact turns. So going for a full mull outside of that is something that I'm fully on board with.
If he had something like Og Merchant Step to go with it, then you could start talking to me about keeping Jandis, but I think it's just a little bit too difficult to get multiple procs on the Octobot, and as it stands, even the first proc is not guaranteed here.
Okay.
Ooh.
Again, I got that heart attack when it looked like he'd full kept there. But I agreed. I think I don't hate the Jandis whatsoever. But, oh my god, if you're just going to draw Contact as the next card with Prize Plunderer, then sure, hold on to the Jandis.
Glory's hand is looking decent, though. If this Neophyte were a Foxy Fraud instead, then he would be very well in the lead in the early game. But just going Neophyte into Mankrik is a pretty decent curve. And then by that point, he will likely have picked up an easier way to activate his Swindle. And the Swindles are 2 shots at immediately drawing Mankrik's Enraged. And that is obviously very powerful in the matchup.
Very, very powerful indeed. It's a very set out game plan, a prescribed course here for Glory as to how he should play out this hand. Unless he wants to. Oh no, wait, he can't even find One Thief into devolving on this turn. Like the best he can find would be Flurry or something like that, which doesn't sound worth it over just Mankrik.
Yeah. The only deviation I could see is like One Thief into his Vanessa to get his own Octobot, but I feel like that's a lot worse. Oh, okay, he's doing it. I was going to say, I feel like that's a lot worse to play it on turn 4 compared to how strong it is for Surrender next turn, because like by that point, Surrender will have a lot of mana to work with, or rather to cheat, to then one-shot the Octobot with a Prize Plunder. So I was thinking just Mankrik as well, but Glory is going for this line.
It's spicy. I'll give him that. And Surrender, I think here is owed... Oh, is he? I was going to say you're supposed to go for one more setup turn here, but Field Contact, Coin, Mankrik, Prize Plunderer is not bad. Probably, again, still just Kazakus first for a 1-cost Golem to set up, but that is tempting me, if I'm honest.
I think it's pretty strong, right? Because if he does just go for the Kazakus turn, yeah, Glory can go for the Octobot, and then Surrender still has a way of dealing with the next turn with Prize Plunder. But what if he has Octobot plus a proc? And then if he had gone for the Field Contact this turn, it kind of forces Glory to do something reactive instead. But Surrender is going to go for the Kazakus here, and I don't even know if it's a 1-cost he picks.
Neither do I, because we can't see. So we'll just have to wait until we find out what the option is. I would anticipate that it's a 1-cost Golem here, if I'm honest. I think his hand draws enough to the point where he does not need the extra value. Finds Poison and deal 3, which when your opponent has just fished an Octobot from your hand, that is premium.
Okay, but Glory can now proc his own Octobot, which admittedly is a lot weaker of a hand to get the discounts compared to Surrender, but he can get the Swindle rolling. The big problem is he hasn't had the time to play Mankrik this far, which means that the Swindle is really not that strong for Glory, right? I really like the idea of drawing post Mankrik to get more chances at the 3/7 popping out.
I don't know how this is supposed to be played out. So, like, by that metric, do you go, I don't know, Mankrik and Orc Merchant on this turn to kill off the Kazakus? Like, I know that you want to proc the Octobot, but just staying ahead on board is pretty useful.
Maybe it's like Octobot and 1 Swindle, and then you go for the things next turn, but by that point, might as well just proc the Octobot. So, Glory is deciding to play the Swindles prior to Mankrik. This is immediately better to play around most 5-cost Golem combinations from Surrender, which I think would still be on Glory's mind because he doesn't see what we see, right, with this 0-cost Prize Plunderer and Field Contact hand. But yeah, I think Glory is swiftly going to be swept out of this game.
It looks that way. You just need to figure out what is the best possible way to meter all of this out. Like, again, Shadow Step probably looks like it comes down on this turn on either the Prize Plunderer or the Golem in order to clear off the board.
Glasses come off from Glory just at 1 Field Contact. He hasn't even seen what's happening after this. But here we go. 1 Prize Plunderer. I'd like to see Mankrik come down pretty soon as well, just to have max chances of getting the Enraged, but maybe Surrender wants to have the most mana flexibility. I feel like he has enough mana cheated to be able to have his cake and eat it, though.
Yeah, I mean, if he goes for Brain Freeze, then he can technically clear the entire board, but I don't even know if you want to play the Golem at this point. Like, it might just be more useful to save it for if they go Jandis of their own, for example.
Yeah. Just stop the Prize Plunderer, kill Vanessa. The Kazakus trades into the 1 Thief. Surrender's very ahead on board. Glory has not even had time to play his own Mankrik, and you can already see once again the power of early Octobot into Field Contact.
Quite right. And now the best I can see for Glory is Mancrick Swindle. You can Brain Freeze to kill the contact and just pray that you draw your Mancrick as like the next card.
Right. That's his out, I think. In order to offset the amount of board presence Surrender has gotten, Glory absolutely needs the immediate 3/7, so not very likely to get it. Still 2 Wicked Stabs in the deck, but it's as good a shot as any. It's Shadow Step and Octobot. Yikes.
This hand is not it.
It ain't it. Brain Freeze trade, it's the best he's got, and then next turn, if he top decks Jandis into Absolute Miracles, maybe, but I mean,
Sure.
by then Surrender will have had his own Jandis come down, so I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, double Blood Herald for Surrender, Raz plus spell damage for Glory, then maybe we can talk. But obviously this is a miracle that we are looking at already.
I think optimization from Glory as well to go Dagger instead of the Brain Freeze because mana, and he kind of needs his own field contact potentially next turn to do something amazing, but it's going to have to be truly amazing to beat this. Those are not Blood Heralds. Those are 5-drops.
Those are 5-drops indeed. Surrender just saying to himself here, taking a breath. Okay, you're probably going through to the semi-finals now, but don't jinx it. Don't mess it up. Don't get too cocky. Don't do anything wrong. Just play the turn out correctly, which he's done absolutely here. Very little that Glory can do. Field contact off the top with double Shadow Step. If he can get field contact off the top, then maybe we can talk, but oi, 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 that is not it.
Yeah, that's not a Prize Plunderer. And the worst part is the Shadow Steps are in hand, so if he goes Passage and gets the Prize Plunderer, it's only 1 maximum that's getting played. Just a disaster. Honestly, not much Glory could have done in this game. Sometimes the Rogue Mirrors go that way.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I still kind of have my questions about whether he should have gone for the line of One Thief Jandis into the Octobot. It felt pretty slow. I don't think that Mancrick would have won him the game, given what he was up against. It was just too powerful of a hand from Surrender. But either way, not to say it was wrong, but I have questions, at least.
Same. Even as I was suggesting the line, I was thinking that the turn 4 Octobot is just much less impactful, especially having to play that many cards to get it in the first place, which means you're discounting fewer cards. But obviously Surrender had the stronger opening hand, and he played it to perfection all the way down to getting the 1-cost Golem, like you said, to make sure the field contact turn gets the most value possible, and the Jandis to follow up was simply the cherry on top. It's not lethal just yet, but we can most likely understand it to be next turn, but then again, Glory does have this 1-cost field contact, so maybe some miracles still possible? I don't know.
Maybe, but it's going to have to come very rapidly indeed. Yeah, his only limitation here is board space. So if he's thinking like, I don't know, One Thief into Font of Power, into Varden, into locking out the board. I think even if you have that, you're still obviously in with no real chance of swinging back the board. Haha.
Oh, so late. Okay, is that a Foxy Fraud I see off the top? That's a good a way as any to get the field contact train started. We're looking for Prize Plunderers. We're looking for Wand Thieves. We're looking for miracles. That is not it, though.
Yeah, step it again. You're obviously losing the discount because there's no combo cards that cost more than 2 in the deck. But sure, you take your Org Merchant to kill a minion. Still needs that Prize Plunderer realistically to have any chance whatsoever of pulling this back. And even then, he's just going to be dead to Alexstrasza in a couple of turns. This is a valiant but ultimately futile effort for Glory.
Give me that.
That's right.
Not what I
I think to stay on live on board, he could have shot... Oh wait, he wouldn't have even stayed alive on board if he shot the Tiger instead, which he knew was the illusion, left the Janus. He would still just be dead. So Glory gonna throw it down there, wave goodbye, respectful as ever, that we come to expect from our world champion. But the spotlight is all on Surrender now, who has made the miracle run all the way from a couple weeks ago, being scared of potentially getting relegated, to sneaking his way through to 8th seed in playoffs, to now making it to the top 4 on Sunday alongside Possessi.
That's right, Gio. Well, Glory will have the opportunity to qualify next season to the World Championship still. For the moment, at least, in Asia Pacific, we are forging new stories here, because while Surrender is one of the oldest and most seasoned competitors that we have here in competitive Hearthstone, competing since long before we had the Grandmasters system, still yet to get that win at the World Championships, despite multiple appearances over